Welcome into the Energy Tech Podcast presented by OpSite Energy, where today we are filming live from ENTELEC 2026, and we are excited to welcome Andreas Bitzarakis from Select Spectrum. Guys, welcome to Galveston.
Hey, Jeff, it is good to be here. I am your co-host, Mike Flotis with the Energy Tech Podcast, live right here in Galveston, Texas at the Convention Center as part of ENTELEC 2026. And it's great to have Mr. Andreas Bitzarakis here, again, with Select Spectrum. Glad you could be here and join us on the show.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for having me. Really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to meet you guys, and thank you to OpSite.
Yes, thanks. So, other than your name, I want to know, tell me a little about what you do there at Select Spectrum, kind of what your role is. I just before the show, you and I were talking, and you're not in the Texas area, so I want to get a little bit of background on you, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I serve as Managing Director of Broadband at Select Spectrum. Select Spectrum is effectively a licensed spectrum brokerage and advisory firm. We represent clients over about 25 frequencies, ranging from 150 megahertz up to 40 gigahertz. So as you can imagine, encompassing so many different applications and use cases across a variety of sectors, including but not limited to oil and gas, which we're focusing here at the ENTELEC show.
Yeah. Ooh, man, that sounded like a legal statement. I like that. That was long. So when you say that, one of the things in oil and gas has a ton of challenges. Everyone, the first thing I think about is its critical infrastructure. The second thing is because it serves critical infrastructure, you have wireless technologies and you have spectrums that you want to secure. So kind of tell me in terms of oil and gas and energy, what you provide to anybody that's in that space specifically.
Yeah, for sure. First, we want to understand exactly what the needs and the applications that are looking to be supported by that individual prospect, right? But typically in oil and gas, they may be operating in areas where, say, for example, carrier networks aren't present, right? Where you don't have, you can't use a Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T SIM because it's a really, really rural area and connectivity isn't ideal, for lack of better words.
Okay.
Additionally, it's really important that, especially for private networks, one of the results in the outcomes of it is now you own and you control all your data, which
Yes.
allows you to analyze that further and things like that. Where, again, if you're using some kind of carrier-grade network, it's really hard to own and maintain your own data, right? And
Right.
be able to, to leverage that going forward to become more efficient.
Right. So, and you're not just, you mentioned licensing, and that's only one part. It sounds like to me like that's only one part of what you do, right?
Well, we don't do licensing, to be clear. We represent the interests, on the frequency side, we represent the interests of the license holders. Okay. And then socialize those licenses with the appropriate vertical to, monetize them via lease or sale. Sometimes we also work to develop a certain spectrum, right? So one example I'll give is, say a certain spectrum exists, but it's not standardized with 3GPP for LTE or 5G or something like that. So we may support that. On the other end, we also work on the buyer side. Less so, but more so, think about it like a buyer's broker, right? You have, let's just use oil and gas. You have an oil and gas group that wants broadband spectrum to deploy their own private network, and they would leverage our expertise to go out there, identify what options are available, and then get the best deal for it.
So let me ask this then. In some cases, are you saying that you might put, I call it boots on the ground, in order to do maybe path load study because terrains are different in certain areas? Is that what you do? Is that part of what the company does or not?
Not at all, really,
Okay.
to tell you the truth. We focus solely on the licensed spectrum issued by the FCC.
I see. So in other words, it sounds to me like what you do is bridge the gap with those parties to ensure that someone has a clear license and spectrum in order to move their data, critical or not.
That's right, and provide them, a path to either ownership or lease, to be able to obtain those usage rates to leverage it for their applications.
So in terms of customer size, what does that look like for you? Is there not some customers too small, too big? What does that look like for your company?
That's a great question. We deal with operators of all shapes and sizes. There is not any operator too large or too small for Select Spectrum.
So understanding that, if I'm going to call, let's say, a small producer in West Texas, and I know that I've got to deploy a network type in my area, I've got a spectrum, or another one might be we operate assets in the Appalachia, which is completely different than West Texas, right? It sounds to me like where does Select come in and support that?
Select supports a similar, a little different than what you said. Say, an operator wants to deploy a private network for whatever reason, and they're looking to identify and procure rights to licensed spectrum.
Got it.
We would help on either end of that, whether helping them and advising them to obtain it if we don't have it in our inventory already,
Okay.
or providing our inventory that may suit their needs in that particular area.
Okay, so if I'm a regional player in oil and gas, who are the right folks that you're talking to? Is it someone in legal? Is it someone in operations? Where do you fit in right there?
Typically in oil and gas, it starts in the engineering,
Okay.
right? Because they need to rationalize and they need to kind of get that proof of concept and say, all right, this is going to work and this is going to do what we need it to do. And then once they provide their recommendation, it may go upstairs to say, the financial, or C-suite, if you will.
Okay, so that sounds to me like you're touching this on FEL or front-end engineering and design early on.
That's correct.
And when you do that, what are some of the groups and teams that Select brings to the table?
We typically try to handle as much as we can and we're
Right.
capable of. But typically, folks that we would bring to the table are engineering firms.
Okay.
Third-party engineering firms, equipment manufacturers, right, on the UE side or
Yeah.
on the base station side. And then we're also agnostic, right? We don't have any favoritism to any particular manufacturer. Hey, these are all the different manufacturers that support this particular band.
Got it.
Here's a good engineering firm that is best suited for your application or use case. Here you guys go, and they take the ball from there.
Let me ask you this. What do you think is probably one of the challenges when someone is, I would imagine that there's some folks that say, well, we're in a certain spectrum, which is normal. Where is it challenging to select a spectrum for moving data or camera data or private data? Is there kind of unique situations where you're not just using a typical spectrum range?
I don't think so. I think one of the biggest challenges is making sure that the spectrum that is ideal for supporting your use case is available where you need it. I mean, as you know, licensed spectrum is a finite and scarce resource, so
Yeah.
it may not be available everywhere, right? Or you may say, hey, this band is the best. What I heard is this band might be the best for this application. However, you need to verify that it's available in that particular area. So I think that's the challenge, ensuring that the right spectrum is available in the right place.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that you do have some engineering folks. Have you ever had a case where it required some specialty and the Select team was able to provide some capability or spectrum space for a client? It doesn't have to be oil and gas. It could be anywhere.
Can you? I just want to make sure I understand Can you rephrase that for me?
Yeah. So have you ever had or just give me a challenge. Let me rephrase it. Have you ever had a challenge where, hey, we knew that the customer believed maybe they weren't served a certain way, but Select was able to come in and provide that spectrum and that capability for them to continue their project or their work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in some cases you see that, an operator of any, whether oil and gas or any other kind of operator, may start working with a manufacturer and start maybe getting down the road with a certain type of a deployment to support a certain use case, but hasn't necessarily figured out the spectrum piece yet.
Yeah.
So we have been able to come in the fourth inning, for example, sometimes, and be able to provide that missing component.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I was thinking about, just the space that you're playing in. Tell me about whether or not you're seeing challenges in two areas. The first one is in cybersecurity, and the second is in artificial intelligence.
We're not personally seeing challenges in either of those, just by virtue of not typically having to deal with them in our space.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like, and maybe you help me out here, but it sounds like one of the great things that Select does is you broker those blocks of spectrum and make sure that any customer that comes to you has that kind of, I call it agility or capability to ensure in that area they're covered. Is that fair?
That's exactly correct, and mostly because the spectrum that we deal with is fully licensed by the FCC, exclusive use. I mean, if you have the rights to that spectrum in that geographic area, no one else can use it. It's not a shared spectrum or lightly licensed or something of that nature.
Got it. And so it sounds to me in your space, you guys work directly with engineering, or do you work direct with end users? End users being like a producer. I'm Mike, and I'm the VP of Communication at Chevron. And I know that I want to do this type of project, or is it you mostly work with like an EPC firm, engineering, procurement, construction, or anybody in those spaces?
I would say both.
Okay.
I would both, equal amount of both.
Wow. So you mentioned your team. Would you say that in terms of your team, you've got some flexibility there in-house and some specialty as well?
That's absolutely correct. So, I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, I mean, I'm the managing director of Broadband. So, as you may expect, I deal with broadband frequencies. I mean, we also have folks that are on our team that specialize in narrowband frequencies and specialize in critical infrastructure and utilities and oil and gas and so on and so forth. So, we certainly are versatile as a team. Small, nimble, but versatile.
Wow. What are some of the new things that you think your group is involved in right now in terms of offering up spectrum space? What are some of the things or new things that you're seeing now?
I mean, one of the most notable things in material, and it's something that I'm extremely excited about, is a band called Band 54, which is available nationwide. And that's 1670 to 1675, so that's 5 megahertz of TDD spectrum. And again, as I mentioned, you know, spectrum is a finite and scarce resource, especially spectrum in the lower mid-band.
Yes.
So Band 54 is certainly something that's on the newer side that's very exciting at our firm.
When you say Band 54, where is that typically applied? Is that in like a low latency space, or where is that?
It could be in a low latency space. I mean, it's certainly dedicated to critical infrastructure as a whole. So oil and gas, utilities, and organizations similar to that.
Okay, and in that space, are you talking more like heavy metallized space, or that's not important when you look at that band?
It's not something that we typically run into.
Okay, wow. And so to knock out the complexity, what is it like working with Select? Like if someone's reaching out to you, how do they do that?
They can go to our website, selectspectrum.com. You know, LinkedIn, right? Email. Those are probably the prime paths.
The key ways to get a hold of you.
Yeah.
Man, that sounds cool. It's quite interesting. You know, I do want to put a plug out here that we really like to have you, aside from this show, because of the amount of time that we do have. I think it'd be good to get you guys on the show again, you know, with the Energy Tech podcast. And I want to ask you personally, what do you hope to take away from ENTELEC?
ENTELEC.
Yeah,
you have
ENTELEC.
a slightly different pronunciation than me. I like it.
Okay, yeah, we'll say it. So I say ENTELEC, but ENTELEC. We'll use the So as you know, ENTELEC's got a rich history of being around for decades, and you know, if I talk to the old timers, it's ENTELEC. When I talk to the younger folks, it's ENTELEC. So we'll say ENTELEC. In your mind right now, you came to the show. What are some of the things that you're looking at and you hope to get on some takeaways from ENTELEC?
Well, I mean, I've been pleased. I've been speaking here at this show for about 5 or 6 years now. So I think, you know, just ensuring that we get in front of all of the players that are looking to deploy licensed spectrum and ensuring that they know all the opportunities that exist.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have you here, Andreas, and you can catch him. He's going to be around here at ENTELEC for sure. And now you can definitely catch him here at ENTELEC, and it's great to have you on the show, and I'm sure there's more to talk about, and I hope that you get a lot of takeaways coming out of ENTELEC right here, man.
And the same goes to you guys. Thank you for having me.
Andreas, good to have you on the show. I'm your co-host, Mike Flotis, with the Energy Tech Podcast, right here in Galveston, Texas, ENTELEC 2026.